David spoke at me for 3 minutes without realising I had a whole egg in my mouth. I had adopted my usual stance to eat my lunch, hunched over in the stationery cupboard between the printer cartridges and stacked columns of parcel tape. Noon. It can be a fine thing to snuffle your lunch, and often the highlight of a working day. Many's the time I've stood in Swansby House's cupboard, beneath its skylight, lapping soup straight from the carton, or chase-licking individual grains of leftover rice from a stained piece of Tupperware. This kind of lunch will taste all the better when eaten unobserved. I popped a hard-boiled egg into my mouth and chewed, reading a dozen words for envelope, printed in different languages down the side of some supply boxes. To pass the time, I tried memorising each term. Boritek remains the only Hungarian I know, apart from Biro and Rubik, named after their inventors, the penman and the human puzzle. I chose a second hard-boiled egg and put it in my mouth. There was the usual degree of snaffling face-in-trough rootling when the door opened and Editor-in-Chief, David Swansby, sidestepped into the cupboard. It was only etiquette that gave David this title, really. He came from a great line of Swansby editors-in-chief. I was his only employee. I stared, egg-bound, as he slipped through the door and pressed it shut behind him.
"Ah, Mallory,"
David said.
"Glad I've caught you. Might I have a word?"
He was a handsome 70-year-old, with a spry, demonstrative way of using his hands, which was not suited to such a small cupboard. I've heard people say that dog owners often look like their pets, or the pets look like their owners. In many ways, David Swansby looked like his handwriting. Ludicrously tall, neat, squared off at the edges. Like my handwriting, I was aware that I often looked as though I needed to be tidied away, or ironed, possibly autoclaved. By the time afternoon tugged itself around the clock, both handwriting and I degrade into a big, rumpled bundle. I'm being coy in my choice of words. Rumpled, like shabby and well-worn, places emphasis on coziness and affability. I mean that I looked like a mess by the end of the day. Creases seemed to find me and made tally charts against my clothes and my skin as I counted down the hours until home time. This didn't matter too much at Swansby House. David Swansby was not a physically threatening presence, and it would be unfair to say I was cornered by him in the cupboard. The room was not big enough for 2 people, however, and a corner was involved, and certainly, in that moment, I was directly relevant to that noun becoming a verb. I waited for my boss to tell me what he needed, but he insisted on small talk. He mentioned something mild about the weather and recent sporting triumphs and dismays, then mentioned the weather again, and when he had got that out of the way, I began to panic, mouth eggfulsome. Surely now he must be expecting me to offer some response, or to vouchsafe, or confess, or at the very least contribute a thought of my own. I considered what would happen if I tried to swallow the egg whole, or chew it and speak around it, act as if this was normal behaviour. Or should I calmly spit it, gleaming and tooth-notched, into my hand, and ask David to spit out what it was he wanted, as if it was the most casual thing in the world? David twiddled the handle of a label dispenser on a shelf near his eye. He straightened it a touch. This is editorial behaviour, I thought. He glanced up at the skylight.
"I can't get over this light," he said. "Can you? So clear."
I mumbled.
"Just look at that."
He switched his gaze from the skylight to his shoes in their weak pool of sunlight. For my part, appreciative noises.
"Appricide,"
David said. He pronounced it with fervour. People who work with words like to do this. enunciate with admiring flourishes as if a connoisseur, and to show that here was someone who knew the value of a good word, the terroir of its etymology, and the rarity of its vintage. Then he frowned, paused. He did not correct himself, but unfortunately I remembered this word from Volume 1 of Swansby's new Encyclopaedic Dictionary. David meant apricity, noun, the warmness of the sun in winter. Apricide, noun, means the ceremonial slaughter of pigs.